Get to it.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Back once again, third week in a row, which is crazy. It's Box Office Battles with Greg and Eric, your favorite movie podcast that makes other movies battle each other for our pleasure. And tonight is a special night because it's our special Halloween episode. Our first Halloween episode.
Our spooktacular. That's a pun because it's like spectacular, but because it's Halloween, it's spooky.
Is that it?
Yeah. And if there's one thing I love, it's a good pun, so
yeah,
because we're bat to the bone.
Did you write these down before the
goodhousekeeping.com/holidays/Halloween puns? There are 177 of them on this list. I want to see how many I can fit in here.
Oh, you're not joking. You actually have a list.
Yeah, and it's separated out into category. Like some are about Halloween candy, like it's Nestle Crunch time, Greg, or you're a real lifesaver. I'm gonna starburst if I eat all this candy. Some are better than others. Don't go gobbling up all my candy. But if you do like ghosts and goblins, Greg, you can find yourself gobbling on these nuts.
Of course I can. Every episode I find myself gobbling on these nuts.
Yeah, some way we'll get around to it.
You find some way.
Greg, 4 movies. We had to watch 4 movies in the last 2 weeks.
Well, actually, if you count the previous
6
week
movies.
We did 8 over 6 weeks and then 4 just for the Halloween episode. So we're glad to be back, but I figured it was a couple of days before Halloween. Let's do a special episode. We're going to take a couple of weeks off after this to get recharged, and we'll have another category. But right now it's all about Halloween. It's about scary movies, but it is also about having a special guest.
Friendship.
Yeah. The friends we make along the way.
Yeah.
And we have a special guest that's going to hang with us for the entire episode. He's going to help us to kind of get to a decision on these 4 films and find out which of the 4 is the best horror comedy ever made. You guys may know him from Jaret Goes to the Movies. He's our friend. He's your friend. And we're so glad to have him on. This is our first guest, really. We haven't had anybody guest on the show.
No one's willing to do it.
Unless you count your kids when they come in to say goodnight to you.
Yeah, they'll be in a little bit. But yeah, they don't count. They're just little kids.
Exactly. It's Sean, everybody. We're glad to have him back. I don't know if I have any applause. Let's see if I have any applause.
Sad trombone. There's our Halloween. Sean.
Hello. What's up, everybody?
It's good to have you, man. We haven't talked since, well, just by text, but we haven't talked since I went to see the band, the Lions at the Gate, with you down at when you were doing the photographer thing for down in Cincinnati.
With the Bluebird Cafe or something?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's down in Cincy. We had a great night. We hung out.
Diego afterwards. Yeah,
it was a good time. So we talked a little bit about the podcast that Eric and I wanted to start, to kind of spin off of Jaret Goes to the Movies. And right away you said, hey, if you ever need a guest, I'm up for it. So we called you in on it for the Halloween special. So we're calling in the big guns for the Halloween night. So I'm glad to have. How have you been doing? Now we know you just got off the road. So
literally been home not even 48 hours. Yeah. Yeah, exhausted. Tour was good. The guys just finished up their 30th, or the 20th anniversary for the Hangover You Don't Deserve tour.
Yep.
And they're gonna, what do they have coming up? They're going to Australia December, and then then they're
Now,
gonna
you
do.
spend a lot of time on the road, and not just with Bowling for Soup, but how long does it take for you to feel like you're back in a routine at home when you come off the road?
For me, a day or so.
Oh, well, that's
Maybe.
not too bad.
No. I mean, it used to take me a week, but now I'll probably be back to normal tomorrow. So
It would take me a month, and then I'd have to go back on the road, and it would never. I just never feel like I was at home, I think.
Yeah. I mean, but I enjoy sleeping in my bunk. Like it's almost like you're getting rocked to sleep in like an old like 77 Diplomat, just going down the freeway.
Yeah.
Or put in the back window of a Chevelle.
Man.
Yeah.
The number of times that we're like, oh shoot, we forgot the kids booster, and like my youngest is 5, almost 6, and we're going just down the street, like through another neighborhood to go eat, and I'll be like, I think we'll be okay considering I slept in the back window of a 84 Caprice Classic for many years. I think we'll be fine. I remember being on a trip the very first time my dad like turned around and said, y'all need to sit down and put seatbelts on. And me and my brother looked at each other like, what the fuck is this? Like, since when do any fucking loser ass people wear seatbelts?
First, you had to pry them out of the crack just to get them out where they'd shoved down in for comfort and shoved them down out of the way. Yeah. I saw a meme today of a bunch of kids in the back of a pickup truck with the hood thing over it with a mattress laid down. That was a common thing. In fact, my dad got pulled over for DUI. We were on a road trip and he had 3 underage kids in the back on a mattress and gets pulled over for DUI. He was the only adult. So we're sitting there on the side of the road with the back of this truck. It's funny now, not really, but it's crazy. Yeah, we ended up. My niece's mother had to come get us. We were at the police station, and he got locked away. Wonderful time.
Gravy.
I didn't mean to go dark there. I was trying to keep it light, and now I'm looking back on it. Wait a minute.
Did we know all of these kids?
That's trauma. Yeah, no, it was. I had a niece and nephew that was there, and their parents came for us. Okay. He'd picked me up from my mom, and we had already gotten into we had gone from Michigan to Kentucky when we got pulled over. We were going to my grandfather's funeral.
Well, you can't blame a guy for being emotional about his dad dying.
Yes.
And putting back a few cold ones for the road.
I'm just realizing how traumatic it actually was when I'm speaking it now.
Oh shit. Are we gonna watch these movies, or you just want to talk through kind of some of this?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I that'll be the end of it.
Like, I can't wait for Sean to be on. It's gonna be hilarious. It's like, except for the story of Greg's alcoholic father, who we already have a place in our heart for when Greg told us about his attachment to the movies and why.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Okay, cool. The more you hear about this guy, Greg, and I know he's your dad, but the more I hear about him, I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah, no, he was pretty funny.
Fun, I bet.
He was fun. He was a lot of fun. But when I got older, it was a lot easier to deal with. But I we'll get to those stories down the road when they apply to other films. But tonight,
down the road,
down the road,
get that far without getting pulled over.
I wonder why I'm drinking bourbon on a freaking Wednesday night.
No, I don't see any negative effects from my dad.
No connection whatsoever. Let's just say that. Anyway, so the reason we're here is to discuss. It's Halloween in a couple days, so we're decided to have a special episode and do the top horror comedies of all time that we would consider. Now, we had 3 that were shoo-ins. We left it up to the vote on the Facebook page, and we kind of seeded them based on that. What was surprising was that the 4th seed, the first 3 were like for sure, locked in. Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead, Young Frankenstein had a lot of votes. But Tucker and Dale versus Evil snuck in with like a handful of votes at the end that beat some of the other ones that just had 1 vote. And I think even our dear Casey voted for Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Was someone like electioneering for this thing?
It could have happened. But I will say this. And we left it up to people could add their own films. So we had a list of people that just added one and then anybody could vote for it. And if you didn't click on the show more, you probably didn't see it. But I will say this, Tucker and Dale is one I would have probably chosen to be on the list just because if you haven't seen it, it's a surprisingly well-crafted, low-budget film. It's so I think it does deserve a place in one of the best horror comedies, maybe if not the top 4. So what do you think, Sean? Have you seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
Absolutely. That was, I think, whenever it came out, whenever it got added to Netflix, I was home one day and I was like, I don't know what this is. And I throw it on. I didn't read anything. I knew nothing about it. And then when the whole movie flips, I'm like, wait, what the hell just happened? And I'm like, this might be one of the greatest movies ever. And I was in. And then, Eric, were you on the show when we did it on the other podcast?
No, because I'd never even heard of this movie until Greg sent a text to me the other day.
Oh, that's right. It was Rich. Okay. I remember now. Yeah, that was a really awkward episode. But I as soon as I saw it was on your guys' list, I was like, oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, this wasn't on my radar at all. This is a movie from 2010.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rated R. I like all of these 4 movies we watched because with the exception of Young Frankenstein, they were all about an hour and a half, which is what you want from your average horror/comedy movie. So this was pretty great.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk about Tucker and Dale versus Evil for sure. It's unfortunately going up against the number 1 seed, which is Shaun of the Dead, which is just about everybody's favorite horror comedy. So we're going to discuss those. But before we get into that, we're going to take on our first matchup real quick. It is the number 2 seed, a Mel Brooks classic, one of his best, if not the best, with Blazing Saddles and Spaceballs right there next to it. We're gonna have a good discussion then against Zombieland, the number 3 seed, who is interestingly enough the other zombie film in this top 4, and very similar to Shaun of the Dead, but in a different vein. So, Young Frankenstein, Zombieland. We're gonna start with Zombieland. Zombieland came out after Shaun of the Dead. It came out, I think, also in 2010, like we were talking about, or 2009 maybe. I think it was 2009 with around the same time. Yeah, 2009 was Zombieland. And it was a unique take. Now, the zombie craze had kind of had a resurgence with the new Dawn of the Dead and Shaun of the Dead, and then Walking Dead came out. And so we were getting inundated with a lot
Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead.
So there was a lot of stuff going on at the time with dead people and reanimated corpses. It gives you, listen, the zombie thing's been like the, I don't know, 70s, the B-movie zombie shit. It just sets a perfect bed for, exactly what you're going to get. Reanimated zombies and trying to escape them. And you can, like, 1 sentence plot, and then you just get all of your creative might can be poured into all of the creative ways that you set traps or get away or how you kill them or all the things. So it's great. I actually watched Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland on the same day, and I watched them back to back. And so it was like I just watched one long zombie movie, really, at the end of all of it. And I was thinking, I wonder if these other two movies I'm about to watch are also zombies. They turned out to not be. But yeah, Zombieland, at least from what I could tell in the two zombie movies that I watched on the same day, had a kind of this modern take on it. I mean, it's significantly newer than a lot of the movies, I think. It's significantly newer than Shaun of the Dead anyway. And I liked it. I thought it was really fun. I didn't know that I expected to like it. But it had
You
this.
seen it? Had you not seen it before?
No, I hadn't seen any of these movies before.
You hadn't even seen Shaun of the Dead.
I thought I had seen Shaun of the Dead for Jaret Goes to the Movies, but I think we watched a different one with that same Simon Pegg guy. Like, wasn't there? He's a police officer in one of them.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz.
So that's the one that I actually saw.
We did Shaun of the Dead, but it was with the other guy.
Yeah, with
The other
Rich. So yeah, that guy is fine, by the way. So, but I thought it felt pretty modern. I liked the rules, that he would talk about them and they'd pop up on the screen. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to tell the story. It's some foreshadowing, what is it called? Is it Chekhov's gun, where if you're going to put a gun in the scene, then a character better use it, at some point. And that's what those rules felt like, when he says cardio or don't be a hero or always wear your seatbelt, you're going to see something related to that. And I thought that was a really interesting way of telling a story. But I don't know. This is a genre, horror, or at least these are takeoffs of horror movies that I'm wholly unfamiliar with. I don't watch horror movies. I don't enjoy them. It's not my thing. The top 100 horror movies of all time, and I've seen 0 of them, I can assure you. The one that Sean made us watch for Jaret Goes to the Movies with the kids stuck in the fucking Amazon or whatever was like
Green Inferno.
Yeah, the fucking worst.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a very limited knowledge of this genre, which is probably why I've done all the talking so far. So
but if you want to talk mafia movies, then Eric's your guy.
Then I loved a mafia movie, May, for sure.
I still get shit about that to this day. People will be like, "Yo,
fuck them,"
and they're usually against me.
Well,
what's funny is we did the first battle we did the top 8 of AFI's movies of all time, and The Godfather won, and it was really no contest. It was we had other good movies in there, but they were critically acclaimed. But The Godfather just clearly, for both of us, was an exceptional film. So we talked about that on during that episode about the Mafia Night on Jaret Goes to Movies. So that's funny.
Did you also bring up the TV show? I know you did, Greg.
Oh yes, I did.
Okay.
The Offer, the one with what's his name?
Tom Cruise.
He plays Al Reddy. No, it's not Tom Cruise. He plays Al Reddy, the producer.
Yeah.
But no, we did bring it up. I think that's an exceptional TV show. I told Eric to watch it if he hasn't watched it yet.
Yeah.
On Paramount Plus. Fantastic.
It will make you look at The Godfather in a totally different way, and then it's going to make you want to go back and watch it, knowing what you know now.
Yeah, and I fact checked a lot of it, and there was some things that were embellished, but a lot of it was directly taken from Reddy's diaries and from people that were there, and that made it even more enjoyable knowing that was. But back to Zombieland, I think. What I like about zombie films are they're like a post-apocalyptic horror fantasy. It's one of those things of being the last people on Earth, and your only nemesis is this undead, non-talking, non-verbal enemy that doesn't really have a personality. They're just a threat, and because of that threat, everything's been wiped out. So you have this, and you kind of get that in Zombieland, where all this guy ever wanted was a girlfriend or somebody that, basically a family. He does talk about that because he never had a family. And I think that's kind of the theme around this post-apocalyptic kind of fantasy, because being the last dude on Earth or one of the last few humans on Earth he's able to build a family and find everything he was looking for. So it's kind of got that fantasy about it.
And you're instantly able to connect with a character or whoever's trying to survive, because we have a tendency to put ourselves in their shoes and go, well, I wonder if I would make it through something like this. And these movies, at least in Shaun of the Dead, they don't know exactly what's caused it or why. In Zombieland, you get a little more backstory behind it. But yeah, it's easy to think, oh, well, I guess, I mean, I'd have to protect my family, and I would not. I'm a giant pussy, and there's no fucking way. The cardio, any of these survival things, I'm just not the one.
So you're more of a Columbus and not a
I
Tallahassee.
Yeah, I would just probably just give up quick just to get it over with, instead of the stress of like weekdays, the initial hours and then the days and then the weeks of having to deal with this bullshit. And these guys are like 6 months after the initial wave. No fucking way. Like we either need to get where we're going to wherever the survivors are, or I'm just going to walk straight into being chowed down on, because this is too much. It's also aggravating and also inconvenient. I think that's the part they don't focus on enough, is how inconvenient all this is. Like, I've got shit going up. Monday Night Football's tonight. Oh no, my running back who's supposed to play tonight, Monday night, who I left in, he's not playing. Now I got to go out on the waiver wire, pick somebody else up. And none of this can happen when you're being chased by zombies.
Well, especially if your running back has turned into a zombie, that is even worse, because then they're on the IR.
Okay, wasn't it? No, it was Shaun of the Dead, where we find out at the end that they use all of the zombies for amusement, and I really liked that little twist at the end of that one, where now they've got game shows and stuff. But okay, are there rules? I'm gonna ask the two of you, because you guys know more. Are there rules to what a zombie can and cannot do? Because in one movie, they're slow and cumbersome and kind of whatever, and in the other, they'll run after your ass, and I thought there were like, they can't open doors, or they can't, like, are there, like Isaac Asimov had his rules for robots.
Mhm.
Are there rules around the zombie genre that are generally followed, or unwritten rules? You guys tell me about this.
I'll let you take it, Sean. I'm sure you know the answer.
Fuck, I don't know.
No fucking know.
Well, I feel. I mean, was Romero the first time we ever saw zombies, like, on screen?
Flesh eating zombies for sure.
Right.
Because if you go back to like the 40s, they were always tied in with voodoo, and they were usually either living dead or people that had been brainwashed that did the bidding of their master, who controlled them to commit murder or whatever. But it wasn't until Night of the Living Dead that they used them as flesh-eating zombies or living dead that came out either from the ground or, and those were slow moving.
Right.
And so there were rules in the beginning where that was about it. They were slow moving. They were very, all they wanted was to get at you. Dawn of the Dead, which is in the 70s, a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. Same thing.
Yeah.
Great sequel. And then I think it was the remake of Dawn of the Dead in 2004, where, or may have even been 28 Days Later, which is around the same time.
I think it's 28. I know where you're going. I think it was 28 Days Later.
Oh, Sandra Bullock, the Sandra Bullock film.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And then part 2, 29 weeks and a half later.
Yeah. 30 bridesmaids dresses or something was filled out the trilogy. Yeah, I just always thought they were like, A, slow, and B, not able to like climb stairs, or I mean, I don't know that I ever heard this. I just assumed that there were like these at least made the rules fair. But I mean, the ones in Zombieland were climbing shit and really fast and would,
Well,
set traps for you, and like they're a little more advanced on the zombie scale. But in World War Z, which apparently the movie sucks and the book is awesome, but I watched the movie, not having read the book. They also were super fast and stuff. So I don't know. It feels like we're playing pretty loose with the rules of zombies here. And
here's my take.
I just want to get to the bottom of this.
I think Romero started it. I don't think there's any. I think it's more unwritten rules that you should have to take from the ones before you. So I think kind of the big ones are Romero. Then you're going to see 28 Days Later, or I mean, whether it's the remake. I think it's 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
But I think now that Zombieland just kind of entered the chat and said, hey, here's our rules of everything that we've seen and kind of other things that make sense. I think that's another stamp. So someone's just going to take those and run with it and alter it, and we'll see it in the future.
Yeah, I agree with Sean. I think that by the 2000s, the slow walking zombie was no longer scary anymore. In fact, people were making fun of the fact that I could just outrun it. It can't chase me. I don't care, So it got to the point where used to be what was scary about the slow walkers is that they would surround you and you'd get overwhelmed by the numbers. But that became less of a threat. So I think with 28 Days Later, which was virus based,
right?
And so it was like a rage thing. And those zombies, they weren't living dead. They were real people that were filled with rage. That changed the game to where the fast moving zombies, that became scary. I remember when that came out, it changed everything about the genre. And I think the remake of Dawn of the Dead was after it, like you said. And so they remade the original Romero Dawn of the Dead from the 70s with the fast zombies, and it's terrifying. It's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. And I saw it in the theater, and it was amazing. So I think that they adapted the rules for a different generation. And like Sean said, I think they just keep evolving. It's like a vampire film. You watch a vampire film, they have to explain the rules to you, or a werewolf film, because they change them based on whoever's writing that picture. They have some basic stuff, but I've watched like Fright Night where they have the cross and then the vampire grabs it and says you have to have faith. Well, you never used to have faith before. You have to have faith to make your cross work. It just
Doesn't a vampire have to be invited into your home or something like that? One of the rules
in some movies, yeah, and that's the thing. Like the original Dracula, like Bela Lugosi, he didn't need an invitation. He just strolled his ass right on in. And
we should really put a group of people together to kind of codify this rules. And
they need a Zombieland Dracula version to lay everything out.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, I don't know jack shit about the genre, but I was very entertained by Zombieland. And guys, this cameo with Bill Murray. I mean, I hate to fucking spoil a surprise, but this movie's been out for a while. But this was amazing, and I didn't see it coming. And it's one of the best little. What's he in the movie? 7-minute cameos I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, let's watch the clip of when he walks in. This is a short clip from I've got it right here for us.
Yeah.
Bill Murray, you're a zombie?
Oh, God, I'm on fire! Ouch!
You're not a zombie. You're talking. You're okay.
The hell I am!
I'm sorry. I didn't know that it was you.
Are you? What's with the get up?
Oh, I do it to blend in. You know, zombies don't mess with other zombies. A buddy of mine, makeup guy, showed me how to do this. Cornstarch, some berries, a little licorice for the ladies. Suits my lifestyle. I like to get out and do stuff. Just played 9 holes at Riviera. Just walked on. Nobody there. God damn it, Bill fucking Murray!
Yeah, and I love the. I just walked on to Riviera. That's one of my favorite bits. Being a
Nobody there.
golfer, I would be like, that would be the one dream of a zombie apocalypse: is to be able to just play golf on any course you wanted at any time. Yeah, that'd be good. But yeah, it is an amazing cameo. It's a good. It was a great idea, and it's kind of funny because we've been doing this show. This is our 11th episode, and I think we've had Bill Murray in 3 of the films that we've done, and we've had Woody Harrelson in 3, and 2 where they were in it together, because we just did Kingpin.
Oh yeah,
and Bill Murray was in Caddyshack. Woody and White Man Can't Jump. So we're like the Woody and Bill Murray podcast right now. But yeah, it's brilliant.
Movie must be better than I think it is, because they did a little Caddyshack bit in there when Woody Harrelson's being effusive of all of Bill Murray's and does the winning the Masters, from Caddyshack. That's so fucking horribly overrated as both comedy and as cinema. But anyway, I digress. I really liked the cameo. I thought that was really good. And listen, it's got a little bit of a love story. It's got the little underdog that you can't help but root for. Who is this kid? Is this that Jesse Eisenberg?
Yes.
Is this kid? He's giving strong Michael Cera in Arrested Development vibes here.
Yep.
If you close your eyes, you'll just think that's who it is.
There was a type in the late first part of the 2000s. Jay Baruchel's in there. There was a lot of actors. They're looking for that very wimpy,
befuddlingly charming, staring at the tops of their shoes. Yep. Man, you're right. Juno kind of had this vibe.
Yeah.
Garden State had this vibe.
There's another one.
Yep. All the Superbad obviously was a big yeah, you're right. That whole thing, but he's a likable enough character, and you think, I mean, at least I thought the Woody Harrelson character was going to be more of a dickhead than he was, but he was a dickhead, but it was just funny stuff, and he's constantly threatening his little sidekick. So I don't know. I thought it was really great. They meet the 2 girls. Girls outsmart them. Man smart, woman smarter, which is a common theme in
film. Yeah.
So, well, we got into this with sitcoms, it feels like, where every sitcom is kind of based around the schlubby fucking moron with the overly hot wife way out of his league. He knows nothing. She knows everything. He's constantly putting them in, unenviable positions. She's constantly having to clean up his mess. Like, that just became what a sitcom is anymore. And it just spills over into film, I suppose. But yeah, the whole thing, a very enjoyable experience. Again, limited knowledge for me in the genre and the context of the genre, but very entertaining, very fun. I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know that I expected to like it or not, but I got done with it going, yeah, that was great. That's an hour and a half well spent for this type of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I also thought the Woody Harrelson character, when you meet him, he's gruff. He's like you said, he's an asshole. But then you get to know the fact that he lost his son, and that's a nice little twist. I thought when you realize he's not talking about his dog, that moment is probably one of the few really heartstring moments in the film. And then you changes the way you look at him, and then you realize that they are, by the end, like you said, they're a family. And even though they, the girls have tried to ditch them a few times, at the end, the guys go get them, and now they're going to be together. If you have not seen the sequel, I recommend it. It's one of the few sequels that nearly outshine its predecessor. There is a young lady in that kind of joins the crew, and she's got off one of the funniest characters I've ever seen on film. Saw it in the theaters, and my wife and I were laughing out loud. One of the things that was funny though, you were talking about Jesse Eisenberg. My wife and I were watching this together, and then she looked at me and made a relevant question. Has he done anything recently? Is he just gone now? I think he did Lex Luthor in the Justice League, and that was the last I saw of him. He did
Social Network was his big break, right?
Yep. That was a while ago.
Geez, y'all.
Yeah.
No, since Zombieland Double Tap, I assume that's the sequel that you're talking about, and that was 2019. So 5 years ago. He's been in a couple of things, but nothing much of note. Fleischman is in Trouble, which is a TV miniseries he was in 8 episodes of, and that seems to be the biggest thing since then. So, but he wasn't in a bunch before that either.
No,
really.
No. He had a run. And I think he's got one of those looks and one of those faces and one of those limited acting ability to where if they don't need that character, he's not going to be called on.
But it's also got to be kind of a kid, but now he's a 40-year-old man, so it's like
same with Michael Cera.
Yeah.
Michael Cera. It's like, where are these guys now? But the themes of movies have moved on, and so we don't get those same type of characters. We do get some of the younger, like you said, they get the new group of 20-something nerds to be able to do stuff like Pete Davidson and Timothy Chalamet, who's he's kind of a sex symbol, but he's also very frail to me. Comes off as a very frail hero. I like Dune, but he comes off as
he looks like he probably gets out of the shower and tucks his teen and looks at himself. He looks like the type.
It could be.
You guys remember he was in Lady Bird?
In Lady Bird? Oh yeah, that's right. Gosh, that's a while back too. I did like that movie. Yeah. So he's done good films. I just said that they move on from that character, but they just replace them with new 20-somethings until they're no longer viable. But so, what did you've seen Zombieland? Of course, you've seen all 4 of these movies, right, Sean? Or
I haven't seen Young Frankenstein in a very long time, but yeah.
Okay.
Good.
What do you mean good? Oh,
what?
Somebody doesn't like Young Frankenstein, and he's reviewing.
No. I'm just doing a bit, Greg.
So, Zombieland for you, when did you see it? What were your initial thoughts?
Both in theaters when they came out. Thought it was very, very unique. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love everything about it. I just could care less.
It sounds like my whole life.
No, I know it doesn't make sense. It's no, I love everything about it. I just don't. It's not a favorite of mine. But I love the intros where everything is now in your space and you're bumping in with the tech. I love the lists. I love everything. The movie as a whole, I guess, just
it's okay. I think we movies and discuss movies where the execution was great, but for some reason the characters or the story didn't captivate you or capture you in the ways that some others do. I mean, that's a fair assessment of films, generally speaking. So if that's how you felt about this one, I mean, I can see that, and especially if you're well versed in the universe of horror and horror comedies and that kind of stuff. Maybe it just doesn't do anything that moves the needle one way or the other for you, but so it's kind of like you can put it on and not be challenged and not be forced to pay attention to it, and it just exists, in this nebulous space of okayisms, which is fine.
I think for me, I think I can kind of relate to what Sean's saying, because like you said, the titles, when everybody crashes through them, the rules, the humor is really good. The Bill Murray cameo is amazing. The performances, you got 4 really talented actors in it. But I think it was when I saw it in 2009. I loved it for about a year, and I think the shine wears off a little bit.
Yeah.
To where it's still, we still like we put it on. My wife and I still like. I was like, I can put something else on. I can watch this later. She's like, oh no, this is fine. I like this. So we watched the whole thing, and now we're gonna watch the second one again just because we haven't watched that in a while. But I think that it could be one of those things where it maybe not be my favorite, but I still like everything about it. So it's a weird opinion, but I get what you're saying. It's kind of like an oxymoron of like, I love everything about it, but I hate it.
Yeah.
Okay, in the chat, this John Bertherman, who I don't know who that is, but says if Zombieland had more accurate advertising, they probably would have had a bigger cult following. Man, that is, I don't know how they advertised it. I just had they advertised it at all,
right?
Because I mean, I guess I had heard of it. Like I've done trivia for years, and it's been in movie rounds before. You know, when I look for lists of movies that are like-minded or whatever to put a movie round together. But beyond that, I don't remember any advertising at all for. But I do feel like it'd be one of those where more people I know would say, oh, you got to watch Zombieland because it may not, this genre may not even be something you're interested in, but you've got to give this one a shot because it, you know, it kind of in some ways stays true to what the genre has developed into, and in some ways kind of takes the piss out of it. And that's, you know, that's great. But I never heard anything about it. So.
I remember when it came out, I knew it was going to be a comedy and kind of subvert the zombie genre, but like Shaun of the Dead had come out in 2005, so I was like, okay, how much further can they take it? And if you bump the two films up together, they are different, similar but different. They deal with different types of zombies. They deal with the different themes overall, but they both work in their own way. So I don't know. It is a really good comedy for what it is. So let's talk about the opponent it's going up against in the final four, and that's Young Frankenstein. So Mel Brooks film, 1974. You know, he had done, a few films leading up to this. I think he'd done Blazing Saddles before this, if I'm not mistaken, or around the same time. And this was his kind of a love letter or parody of all the Universal horror films, which you had the black and white Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, so popular throughout the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I think probably Mel Brooks grew up on those and wanted to make a spoof of that, which is kind of what he did, like with the Westerns and then later on with Star Wars. It was just it was a good shtick for him to get into and put his own spin on.
It's the Weird Al method of movie making. I mean, it's just as similar as could be. And I think you said it best, it's that parody style. And Greg, and if you like parodies, parodies nuts.
Even I didn't see that one.
Every week. Yeah.
Have either? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was waiting for him to. I wasn't going to answer that. I thought he was waiting for me to go. I do like parodies, and I don't ever answer his questions anymore.
I was going to wait, but I also can force myself on you anytime I want. So, so that's Mel Brooks's thing.
Yeah.
Right. And it works because everyone can name their favorite Mel Brooks film, and mine is Spaceballs because I really like Star Wars. It was probably the first one that I saw, and I was a little kid. My parents weren't going to let me watch Blazing Saddles, but I think I caught Spaceballs on TV or something.
I thought you
caught
balls in this.
It is in my mouth. I wish. But my brethren, and I guess it's just a thing that's going to happen for a lot of movies prior to a certain, year or era. the pacing on this motherfucker, for all of the funny bits and funny characters. And I mean, I had laugh out loud moments of just, there's a zaniness, there's a wackiness, there's little offbeat quips and things that happen in every Mel Brooks film. But this one, it was like, it's an hour and 45 minutes. And to me, it felt like 3 hours, 45 minutes. And I get that not everything can be jump scenes and cut scenes and edited the way they do children's movies today, where nothing happens for more than 7 seconds before something else happens. But boy, and in my defense, before you guys tell me how fucking stupid I am, I liked Slapshot, and it was a 70s movie, and I liked The Longest Yard, and it was a 70s movie, and I didn't complain about the pacing in those films.
Yeah.
I can appreciate in a measured way that takes a little more time, as opposed to serving it up for you like a fucking Happy Meal. Like, I get it. But man, like this one, it's my only complaint about the movie, because I thought the characters were great. I thought the bits were great. The plot isn't the important part of this film anyway. But it was just a little much. It's got an 8 out of 10 on IMDb, I will say.
Yeah.
And Zombieland has a 7.5. So it's not like this is so. It is universally regarded on one hand, but it's not like it's universally, considered to be the greatest movie of all time. I mean, maybe within the genre it is, if you made it genre dependent, but
yeah, I think with Mel Brooks, it's considered one of the best, but I think Blazing Saddles and Spaceballs might outshine it just a bit. And then they had History of the World Part 1. I have a fond memory of it because we used to watch it around Halloween. And so I'm a big fan. I don't have them around me. Yeah, they're down there. I have like the busts of the original Universal monsters. I loved when I was a kid. Yeah, I couldn't watch a lot of horror movies, so I would watch Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Wolfman, and all those. So when this came around, and I was young when I was finally allowed to watch it. I think it was on TV because it came out in '74, and I think I watched it like when I was 8 years old on TV, and it was edited. And I found it to be such, even at 8 years old, I thought it was such a funny reimagining of those movies that I liked so much. And I think the biggest thing that makes it go by with a good pacing for me is my love of Gene Wilder. And so he carries the movie. Every scene, like the opening scene itself, could be any other actor when he's doing the whole experimentation sequence. He performs it so flawlessly, as far as even from when he jabs a scalpel into his leg and he says class dismissed with a little bit of inflection in his mouth as his eyes are watering because he stabbed himself. I think that's what kind of carries it for me, is his performance until you get to Marty Feldman. When Marty Feldman shows up, any scene with Marty Feldman, it immediately improves the scene 1,000-fold. He has the best delivery. He has the best one-liners. And from what I've seen of the blooper reel, if you like Google the blooper reel, he killed everyone on the set. No one could, and he ad-libbed stuff. The old opening scene when he meets Frankenstein, he tells him,
Igor.
the best line is, shouldn't it be Froderick? Is it Froderick Frankenstein? He's like, no, it's Frederick. And then he asks, and it's pronounced Igor. But yeah, I got a clip of Marty that I want to play real quick. It's my personal favorite of the movie. So let's just check this out really quick, just to show you the brilliance of Marty Feldman when he first comes into the film.
Sometimes I'm afraid of the lightning.
It's just an atmospheric discharge. Nothing to be afraid of.
Werewolf.
Werewolf?
There. What? Werewolf. There. Castle.
Why are you talking that way?
I thought you wanted to.
No, I don't want to.
Suit yourself. I'm easy.
I mean, that's one of those things that my wife and I, you know, you have these bits that you say with your spouse, your significant other. I can't even count how many times we've gone the wolf at castle. We're pointing something out. Where is this? And I'll go the McDonald's. And it's just one of those things that we've carried throughout our marriage. And it's part of the love of the film. But Marty Feldman, without a doubt. And there's a million clips I could show. There's one in particular where they're sitting around the breakfast table and he's talking about, it reminds me of what my dad used to say to me. And everybody gets like, oh, what did he say? And then he goes, what'd you do in the bathroom for so long? Why don't you give someone else a chance? It has nothing to do with what they're talking about. And then he just goes back to eating. It's just a really good comedian.
You could give 100 people the opportunity to play their favorite clip, you know, their favorite quote, their favorite gag, and you might come up with 100 different answers or showcases. The movie is just built that way. My favorite was the breakfast scene because just like you said, it was just unexpected and funny. You know, Marty Feldman, there are a handful of actors that are just presumably cast because of their very interesting or prominent features. You know, we had this guy from Happy Gilmore that was also in
Richard Kiel. Yeah.
And there's Marty Feldman. I think of Steve Buscemi, although has a little more acting credibility, I think, maybe than the other two. But there are those people that you cast because you want someone who looks out of the ordinary. But Marty Feldman is such a good actor and so funny that the big offset eyes aren't even the main thing. I mean, it's physically noticeable, but it's not why it is why. It's part of the reason why, but it's not the only reason why, is to have a haha, this guy looks weird character in there. He's so freaking funny. He breaks the fourth wall quite often in the film. I'm coming around on this one. Listen, allow me to reiterate, I enjoyed this. I knew what I was getting into because I've seen Mel Brooks movies. I knew it was going to be funny, and I wasn't let down by that. I just remember my watch a couple times, and that can be because you're having fun, but like there was a lot they could have cut out. There was a lot of wasted, attempts at plot development that didn't necessarily need to be there. You probably could have done this whole thing without the added subtext of the townspeople and the inspector being a part of it, because who gives a shit what they think about it?
True. But what's interesting, and I almost brought a clip in, but I didn't want to have too many clips for this show. The inspector, played by Kenneth Mars, what's so interesting, again, it is a parody of those other films from the earliest. That's a direct parody of a character from Son of Frankenstein who actually has a wooden arm, and in Son of Frankenstein sticks the darts into the arm. When you see this and you think, oh, this is just a throwaway character, then if you see Son of Frankenstein, you'll go, holy crap, I didn't even realize there was. But every Frankenstein movie had the villagers with the pitchforks and coming after them, and the inspector's there to kind of rile them up. There was some scenes that, like with the little girl, but again, that happened in the original Frankenstein when she's at the well. And then the scene with the blind beggar, everything was done. I think the scene with the blind beggar is one of my real favorites because it's Gene Hackman, who wanted to be in the film, loved Mel Brooks, and took an uncredited role and basically handpicked this scene to do. And it's a really well done comedic scene. And I think Gene Hackman's amazing in it.
Okay, so that context helps a lot because a parody doesn't work unless you know the source material.
Right.
As great as Weird Al is, if you never heard the Michael Jackson song Beat It, then you wouldn't find Eat It really that interesting, right? As a standalone piece of media, you might still think it's funny, but it wouldn't be the same. A parody relies on you having a strong knowledge of the subject, that's being parodied. So with that context, and again, I admit I've never seen the source material for a lot or materials for a lot of this. So some of that stuff would be lost on me, but I mean that I guess film, because that notwithstanding, I still found it enjoyable, if not a little lengthy and dragging in spots. But even without knowing that source material, Mel Brooks is good enough at what he does, and Gene Wilder's good enough at what he does to carry you past any shortcomings in that area. Now, Gene Wilder, I go back to Gene Wilder for a second. Everyone has the character they think of when you hear Gene Wilder. I bet for a lot of people that's Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
But I bet there's not a small subset of people who immediately think of this character from Young Frankenstein. I kind of think of him in those like 80s formulaic, movies that he would just do with, I don't know, like Richard Pryor, I think, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, so when you think of Gene Wilder, or Sean, when you think of Gene Wilder, who are you thinking about?
Generally Willy Wonka or See No Evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, See No Evil, Hear No Evil. I saw in the theater in the late 80s, I want to say, when that came out, and the laughter was so loud in the theater you couldn't hear the next joke. That was how good they were. But a lot of that was attributed to Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. So like you said, they were maybe formulaic comedies, but they are just really good performers. It's kind of like the Abbott and Costello thing, is that their shtick may have gotten old to some people, but the people that wanted to see, that's what they wanted to see. Like Stir Crazy is another one that they did together. And I remember Gene Wilder from that and always enjoyed that, and Silver Streak. So yeah, he had a really great career. There's a good documentary about him on a Netflix that's pretty interesting about his, just who he was, his relationship with Gilda Radner from Saturday Night Live, and their marriage, how she died young and he became a widower. But it's exceptional. And I think that's, like I said, when you talk about Young Frankenstein, there's the actors that carry it along. I think one of the ones that I enjoy is Cloris Leachman. She's funny in just about everything she does, but the whole shtick with Frau Brucker and the horses, she pulls it off really well. She can be so creepy. It almost reminds me of Lynn Shay in Kingpin, where she's this over the top kind of haggish character. But again, like a parody, I would say go watch 11 hours of old Universal and then you'll understand Young Frankenstein.
Take your word for it.
Because there's characters like her in the old Frankenstein films. I think Bride of Frankenstein has this haggish character in it, and she's hilarious. That character
bit where she keeps asking him if he needs anything before bed, and then would like slowly rotate and as she asked the question, and then she'd go to the, like make a move towards the door again, and then, well, would you like, and slow, like, I mean, I cracked up at that.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bit for everybody at this, it's kind of a grab bag, and you don't have to only like physical comedy or only like puns or only like off-screen gags or whatever. It's got something for everybody for sure. And that's a good comedy, and like you said, Mel Brooks does the Western takeoff. He does the space takeoff. Here he's doing the horror comedy takeoff. There's nothing the guy can't do with enough thoughtfulness. I think making parodies is hard though, because everyone thinks that they can write down, you know, uh, beers in heaven instead of tears in heaven, and all of a sudden, you're hilarious. But you and I have talked about this a lot when it comes to film, the thoughtfulness that it takes to do it well.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it, but the cream rises to the top when you're thoughtful, when you take it seriously as an art. And I mean, the Police Academy movies did a good job of that. The Naked Gun movies did a good job with that. But Mel Brooks probably, Mel Brooks does a good job. The Christopher Guest, I think, in a way,
right,
has his own way of it's not so in your face on a gag level, but he's really good at taking the thoughtful care to craft a environment that these characters can live in and that the parody can live in. So yeah, I mean, it was good. We lost Sean. I was gonna ask to
he's in a
move
test pattern, so he's not completely gone, but I'm sure
I was gonna move for a vote on this.
We will. Before we do, because we'll see if he comes back before we vote. I did want to mention one other actor in the film for a special reason. Terry Garr played Inga. And back in the early days, she did a lot of these similar roles where she was the comic beauty, where to me, Terry Garr wasn't just a pretty face. She had a really good, kind of spirit about her. And it made the experience when she was in Tootsie.
Mr. Mom is what I remember her in.
Mr. Mom. She was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and she passed away today. And so it's a sad thing. I just watched it this morning.
God damn, Greg.
Yeah. So yeah, she passed away today. Lovely actress, and so it's kind of weird that we're covering Young Frankenstein. But I saw that just before not like an hour before we went live, and I was like, well, go figure. She was beautiful, but she was also, like I said, she was extremely funny in those roles. She wasn't just this pretty face. She could pull it off with a lot of great comedy as well.
Well, stay hard, Terry Garr. We hardly knew you.
Yeah. But I actually, being an 80s kid, or growing up in the 70s and then being an 80s kid, I really like Terry Garr. Also, with that, shout out to Madeline Kahn, who is she's been dead for quite a while, and Peter Boyle, who played the monster. Great scenes that he had in the film. Probably one of my favorites is the putting on the Ritz scene.
Jesus Christ, it's so ridiculous.
And you know what's so funny? There is an amazing story behind this scene. Is that Gene Wilder came up with this scene, and so they were originally just going to have the cliched. He brings the monster out and does him do commands, and then he goes crazy. Gene Wilder was like, "What if we do putting on the Ritz, and I teach him how to do a song and dance?" Mel Brooks hated the idea. Mel Brooks was kind of like, "If it wasn't my idea, it's not funny," and so they got into a massive fight.
Same.
And Gene Wilder was like, "I'm done. I'm done with your freaking movie." And so they parted ways, and then Mel Brooks actually called him up and acted like they hadn't even fought, and was like, "So when are we doing that putting on the Ritz thing?" That that was his way of saying, I'm sorry, without saying I'm sorry. And they ended up doing the putting on the Ritz scene, which I think is it's such a palate cleanser at that point when you get Peter Boyle going. It's one of those things you might not get away with today, but it's really funny for the time. So with that being said, we've been through Zombieland and we went through Young Frankenstein. I'm going to let Eric vote first on this one, and I'll vote first on the next one.
That's fine. I mean, I'm voting, excuse me, for Young Frankenstein. Honestly, thought I was going to come in and vote for Zombieland. But the more we talked about it, I guess if I had to watch it again, I don't know, it'd be tough. It would depend on my mood, but it is the better movie. It is better for the genre. I mean, it probably, is a shining star of the genre of horror comedies. I mean, there's a reason people are it's the first one people think of. Zombieland is great, and I would recommend it to people who haven't seen it. I really enjoyed it, but I think Young Frankenstein is the better movie.
Okay. Now, Sean, you hadn't seen Young Frankenstein in a long time.
Yeah.
You loved everything about Zombieland, but you hated it at the same, or not loved it, but didn't like parts of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What, out of the two, what would you have voted for?
Probably Young Frankenstein.
All right. Well, I'm not even going to worry about the tiebreak, because even if I said Zombieland, we were going to declare Young Frankenstein the winner. So
but you weren't going to say that.
I was going to say Young Frankenstein too.
Of course, yeah.
I just wanted to hear Sean's opinion before, because had I wanted to say Zombieland, then I would have just said Zombieland and then let Sean vote. But I can
predict how you're going to vote. I just look at what year each movie was made and go, whichever one is the oldest one is the one old ass Greg is going to vote for.
I am an old movie buff for sure. I love movies of all kinds, but I started when I was young. I mean, I was in my teens. I started digging into 40s and 50s.
I know, Papa. I know.
And there's such a wealth of material from that era. From I can consume any of it as long as it's good. I'm a big Marx Brothers fan. So
okay, Papa, are the good movies in the room with us right now?
Nice.
Yeah, the one right behind him.
I do want to give a shout out to one of our longtime Jaret Goes to the Movies listeners and viewers and friend of the show, as well as been on this show and followed us for a while. And that's Vinny Cataldo. He just put this in the chat. Came home from work to find his dog of 15 years passed away. Yeah. So, Vinny, our heart goes out to you, buddy. I know what it's like. I have everybody who has an animal pet, whether it be a dog, cat, fish, or whatever, you form a bond with them. And 15 years is a long time. And I'm sure that you loved your dog very well. He had a great home. I'm sure that he had an amazing life. So
I know Vinny's got a very close, big family, and I'm sure, family pet and how they're all hurting right now. So thoughts out, Vinny. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
this is the reason I don't get a pet. Besides having 3 kids and it being constant chaos here, I really don't think I'd be able to handle having a pet around for 15 years and just having to deal with it and to have to comfort the kids. And I'm not built for it. So I just can't have it. It's just a flaw of mine. I wouldn't be able to deal with that.
I was the dad that we're not getting any pets when my kids were little, because we were a military family, so we moved around a lot. And I'm like, I don't need to be paying for import fees and moving cats and dogs around. And about 10 years into my stay in the military, my wife got 2 cats while I was deployed. And I found out about them when I got home. And I never really got too attached to them. I liked them. So I never had a pet of my own until the cats had passed away. My kids had moved away. And for some weird reason, my daughter was working near a pet store, and I just walked in and picked up a puppy. I found one that just caught my eye, and he's been my best friend now for 7 years. And the horrible thing is I dread that day. And so it's like I try to enjoy every moment I have with him. So, Sean, do you have any pets?
Yeah, 2 cats.
Your kitties.
Mm-hmm.
Are they yours or are they?
Oh yeah, no, they're ours. Elliot, he was in the room somewhere.
Well, sometimes there could be your partner's cats, and they're just there in your house.
No,
Oh,
Sean.
no.
Sean loves those kitties.
All right, that's
yeah,
good.
yeah. Elliot, he's a 13, 14. I don't know.
Oh,
And then
wow.
the other one, she's 4.5, 5,
Wow.
somewhere right around there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
Mhm.
Hopefully they live long and happy lives, but shout out to Vinny. All right, let's shift gears to our second matchup so we can see which one is going to be the top horror comedy. This is an interesting one because I love both of these films. And I watched Tucker and Dale yesterday, and I've seen Shaun of the Dead. Oh, good Lord. I can't even count. I watch it at least once a year or so, just whenever the mood strikes. So it's one of those things where, but I watched Tucker and Dale, and I don't think I'd watched it for about, I'm going to say 10 years since I had seen it, maybe, but I love Alan Tudyk. I love the show Resident Alien. I brought up that before. We've seen him in the Dodgeball movie. We talked about his acting ability. He's a great comedic actor, very underrated. So we're going to talk about Tucker and Dale versus Evil first before getting into the number one seed, Shaun of the Dead. Regardless of how this matchup comes out, the fact that this is even considered in our top 4 comedies says how good this movie is. But when you see the film, it is clear that is a lower budget film.
Yeah, so it's lower budget, clearly. It's also the only one I would say that really meets it certainly comes the closest to the horror genre than the 3 others. It's gorier, it's got its moments that are like, man, for a funny movie, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
It's really well done. The way that they set this movie up with this misunderstanding in the first 5 minutes of the film, for those of you who haven't seen it, and all of the, everyone's watched the same events happen, but everyone has a different idea about what's behind it. Why is this stuff happening? What is going on? There's your band of unlikable teenagers, and there's your hillbillies, Alan Tudyk there, and who's this other guy? I've seen him.
No, Tyler Levine. Tyler Levine.
Yes, that's his name. I knew the name. He was on a show on ABC in the Alien Invasion show. I forget the name of it, but he was really good in it. But
like as a dramatic actor?
No, he played the schlub of the main character, like the brother, the shiftless brother. So he was like comedy relief in it. But he was really good.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna see if I can look that up. But yeah, no, they're fantastic.
So this one, I just from the get-go, I found it interesting, and that was enough. Whether the movie ended up good or bad, and it's probably up for debate, anyone watching it, but at the very least it had a unique way to frame all of the events of the movie, and I really appreciated that there was some thoughtfulness to, okay, it's low budget, it's a horror comedy, so we're playing on this ball field. How are we going to make it stand out? How are we going to make it interesting? Whether it stands out or whether it's interesting, we can figure that out. But I just immediately upon starting the movie, kind of like the way that interview, and I just kind of knew I was about to get into something interesting, is how I felt about this one.
Yeah, it's so. One of the things that's surprising about it is because I watch everything. So there's a lot of movies that I'll get and I'll put in my library that I'll have that anybody can watch. And one time my daughter-in-law was looking through my films, and there was so many bad, just horror movies or whatever in there. And she was like, does he watch any of this? And my son told her, yeah, he watches every single one. But it's just that I'll watch a lot of trash movies because you'll find a gem like this. And one of the things that to me makes this movie work so well, it's not only the performances of Levine and Alan Tudyk, it's the script is just really brilliantly written to subvert the horror tropes. The only thing that I could even say comes even close to it is Cabin in the Woods with Chris Hemsworth, where they, if you haven't seen it, again, another one where they take the horror genre and they flip it completely upside down to where everything that's a horror is just this corporation that is creating these scenarios to keep an evil entity at bay. So all of these movies and everything have just so it's a really good film. But this takes it at a very simplistic level, and you have these two, kind of really well-meaning guys from West Virginia. They don't mean anybody any harm. And because of the way they look, their appearances, they're mistaken for possible serial killers, and because of the way we perceive everybody from the get-go. So yeah, it's like the scene where the girl pulls the can away and Dale is looking through the cans. It's just done really well. When they drive by them and they're staring at them and they creep out the teenagers who have a certain misconception about them, it works really well.
Learning not to judge a book by its cover and to treat people, the way you want to be treated. Those are important lessons to learn. Sadly, about 9 of these teenagers learn it in horrible, horrific ways, like getting your face chopped off with a weed eater, or
it's like the snowball. It's great how it starts off small and then just keeps getting worse and worse. So the clip I've got from it, we'll show this real quick. It is like the first incident where the girl is getting ready to go skinny dipping and falls into the water. This is a great scene, and it just sets everything up for the film.
Tucker! Shush! Ah! God damn it, Dale, what the hell is the matter with you?
Me? What did I do? When you see a college girl prancing around in front of you half naked, you do not yell out my name.
Well, you were being a peeping Tom.
You were hopeless. Do you know that? You're hopeless.
She didn't come up yet.
Oh, Jesus.
Hey! Lady! Hey, lady! Where'd you go, Chuck? Oh, fail! Oh, help me, you're in the boat. Come on.
No.
Ah, we got your friend!
Oh, God. They got Allison. Come on.
Hey! We got your friend! Why the hell are they running away? Hey! No matter, Tucker, we gotta get him back to the cabin. Come on. Let's roll. Oh.
I mean, we got your friend. It is gold. It is just comedy gold as far as the idea of it, to play on those misconceptions from all the Woods slasher films. And the first thing the kids think is that these two rednecks pull her into the boat and they've got her. And it just gets weirder from there. If you've never seen the film, I don't want you to stop watching the podcast, but you should watch the film.
In that little bit of the "we've got your friend" comes up a couple of times, and again, they're trying to be helpful. That's their frame of reference, and from the kids' frame of reference, it's threatening. And then he later he carves it into a piece of wood, and so they're again trying to be helpful. They don't have any other medium by which to communicate, and they do that. But of course, if you're seeing it carved into a piece of wood, it's even more threatening. And then they write it, and on a note. And so I don't know. It's like you said, it's really well done as far as just subverting expectations and kind of um, making you think about that. Happens a lot in life. It's one of the reasons that musical shit. Wicked is so popular, right? It's because you get to see a story that and love from a different character's perspective. What, Greg? Something's fucking hilarious, and so I
want to see the musical shit. That's all I
my battle with diarrhea. So that's a tack you can take with telling a story where most movies are told from the protagonist's point of view. Sometimes you have a unreliable narrator. Sometimes you do get kind of both sides, but it's heavily weighted. And this one just does a really good job of
for sure
doing that, especially again for a horror comedy. It's not to be taken too seriously, but they do a good job with this. There's a lot of care there, and for a movie that didn't have a bunch of budget, and so what a good good for the straight. I don't know who Eli Craig is. He's the director, or the writers, Eli Craig and Morgan Jurgensen, but good on them for not having the budget to do, I'm sure, what they wanted,
right?
But approached it with the same thoughtfulness that we often talk about. I thought that was great.
Yeah, Criplius puts in here, I wanted to point out, Tyler was in a horror comedy called Reaper. That's the one I was thinking of, where he was like the brother or the friend, and it's like a devil show where they have to deal with the realm of hell, everything like that. And he was really funny in it. So I would recommend anybody check that out. So thanks, Criplius, for that. He also asked me if I'm a Mystery Science Theater fan. Yes, I am. In fact, I've seen the live show like 4 times and met the cast on the VIP experience. Yes, I'm a huge Mystery Science Theater fan. So good call on that. So the thing about the film, like you said, with the subverting of the expectations and being able to do that, and it's just the way it was crafted. One of the things that makes it stand out is the reactions of Tucker and Dale every time somebody dies.
Yeah,
it never fails to be funny. So one of the Criplius, I think it was Criplius, that put in diving headfirst into the wood chipper. That scene alone is when they react to that, and he's trying to pull him out, and then he says, "They better not take my deposit for this." Because it's the reaction to every single one when they start to realize, and they build it with so many great moments, like when he starts the chainsaw and he saws into the bee's nest, and he comes running around like Leatherface waving the chainsaw around his head. It does so many great callbacks to other horror films, and it makes you laugh because you know that the people are reacting like you probably would. If I saw a dude come running around the corner with a chainsaw waving around his head,
I'm here.
I'm gonna think he's coming to get me, and I'll probably run right into a tree limb and die. So yeah,
it's not the kind of thing where you have the time to figure out if they're friend or foe. They do make Tucker and Dale kind of cartoonishly simpleton, purposefully. They made them hillbillies. They already made them quote unquote unattractive and kind of whatever. But that pays off, like you said, because of their reactions to everything. Because it's not just like they can't figure it out. They eventually, between the two of them, all these things happen, and their best guess as to what's going on around them is that these teenagers have created a suicide cult And it was just funny watching them try to piece together what was happening, and that's the best solution that they could come up with. And I found that really funny. Sean, you said you saw this one on Netflix.
Yeah.
And what, you loved it? You thought it was
Yeah, I threw it on again, not knowing what it was, and I was like, "Oh, this is going for a turn." And it's become one of my favorite movies. Like, I will watch this as much as I can.
Yeah. And it's it's for a good it also fits, again, a movie that, for all of the things that it does, and I think does well, including the not judging and the kind of dual view storytelling, it's still not challenging as a viewer, and so it's easy enough to put on. All of these movies are fine examples of movies you can just have on, and also the type of movie that you can just drop in on if you're flipping through the channels. Like, we're only 10 years away from that reference not making any sense to anybody, but movies you can drop in on midway and just watch the rest of the movies. I do that with Legally Blonde when it's on. I don't have to catch this from the beginning, but wherever I catch it, I'm happy to watch the rest of it because I think that movie's funny. I think, it's not challenging. It's just good enough to have on. And so this movie, I think, is very similar to that.
Hold on. Yeah,
not similar to Legally Blonde, just similar to that type of movie that you can drop in on at your leisure.
So my wife is not that much of an horror fan, especially these days. She really doesn't like torture stuff. She doesn't really like brutality for the sake of brutality. She likes like the Insidious or Conjuring movies, the more haunted house ghost stories, but not like straight up slasher film. Doesn't care for them. But this one is so different and funny, and the two leads are so likable that I put this on. She didn't have to watch it. I say I got to watch these 4 horror movies just to refresh my memory. I hadn't watched Tucker and Dale in a while. Put it on. She walked in halfway through and stopped everything that she was doing to watch the rest of the film, and she was like, "This is so underrated as far as what it is." And knowing those slasher films, because she doesn't like them, to see that switched around, it just is appealing. But again, it goes back to the two guys they cast as well, who, while you said they're simpletons, you got Dale, who's got the memory thing, so he's got Tucker's really wants to renovate the cabin. What I love about it is they buy the cabin and it's already got the news clippings fresh on the wall that you see in every horror film.
Yeah,
it's just great. I love one of my favorite tropes that we see in just about every horror movie is when the cop shows up, puts everybody in the car. I'm going to go check it out. Doesn't take anybody home or take them back to the station. I'm going to go check it out.
Call for backup.
No, doesn't call for backup. He goes in, gets the wooden beam, hits him right in the head.
Yep.
And as they're standing on the porch, he goes to the kids. It's just a great trope that is just exploited through this script. And when it was written, you could see that they were looking at every single cliche that we've seen in every slasher film. So you want to go back to the beginning, which was like Halloween with John Carpenter. And again, we're Halloween right now. I love those films. And I love the first Friday the 13th, and probably 2 and 3 are like must watches for me regularly. I think they're great for what they are, for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, from the late 70s through the 80s and even into the 90s, they became caricatures of themselves, where it was the wash, rinse, repeat. It was the same thing. A friend of mine, I do the fantasy football podcast, always says same soup, just reheated. And that was kind of these slasher films. So to see them take every single one and kind of write the outline, and we're going to do every one of these tropes or cliches and subvert it. It's just a difficult thing to do. And when you see each death, it gets more and more funnier as they just build on it, which is just it's a tough thing to do, to write a script that's good. And I'm just surprised that not as many people know about this movie. Part of the reason is because it didn't get a mainstream release. It's very gory, but as a horror fan, if you run into a horror fan, there's not many that won't say this is one of their favorite horror movies.
Yeah, I can see that. We also in this one get a little bit of a love story, and that clip that you showed. So that character, is the only one that kind of has a camps, because she was with the teenage group. She fell into the water. They pick her up. They are nothing but obviously nice to her, gentlemanly, as most people would be. So she knows that they're not trying to kill the college kids. She also knows the college kids aren't part of a suicide cult. So she's our only kind of reliable neutral in the whole thing. And so as these things go, as more and more of her friends are killed, and she's at various times trying to tell them that these guys, this is not what you think's happening, isn't what's happening. And she's rebuffed as having stock syndrome or whatever that is, where you fall in love with your captors. I must say, though, she doesn't really seem to care too much that all 9 of her friends were killed. Like, I understand that you're building a story between, this love story thing, but like, it's okay to fall in love and also be terrified and like years of trauma, because 8 of your friends were killed, whether it was an accident or not. Like, one of your friends dying tragically, is awful, let alone everyone you just went on vacation with. But they do not play to that for even a second in this movie.
I do think they do one thing regards to that, and I think they do it really well, that makes me laugh, is like right before any of her friends die, she conveniently gets knocked the fuck out.
Yes, every time.
Hilarious. Gets hit by the shovel, hits their head on the rock.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it takes away from her, though, seeing her friends get killed. And by the time the last few get killed, it's because they're acting irrationally.
Yes.
They're the ones that are crazy, including the boyfriend who, ties her up to the old classic sawmill, which is such a throwback to the old Penelope pit stop in peril type thing. And so, but what I loved about it was they show her getting knocked out several times, and in the end, he buys her a helmet. Dale buys her a helmet to keep her from getting knocked out. It's a great kind of wink to people that like you that picked up on that, noticing that why isn't she more traumatic? Well, it's because she keeps getting knocked out.
Yeah.
And then he gets her a helmet. So it's really good. So Tucker and Dale, a worthy 4th seed. So now we're going to get into the last movie of our 4. And again, we want to thank Sean here for being here to break a tie if needed, as we get down to deciding what the number 1 is. And that's Shaun of the Dead, considered by most people who love horror comedies to be probably the greatest. It is the reason it got more votes than any other to be in this episode, and I think it is deserving of being.
It's easy to see why. Simon Pegg is a really, really talented guy, and we've seen it in. Well, I've seen Hot Fuzz and this one as well. There is a very, very British element to the movie, pub culture and the politeness of, or the stereotypical stiff upper lip and politeness of Brits. British humor is sarcastic and kind of has a maybe more of an edge to it than maybe American comedy does. Compare the British version of The Office to the American version, and not which one you think is better, but the main character, David Brent, and the UK version, Michael Scott, and the
Yep. Well, that's it for Eric. So Eric usually freezes like once an episode. I think he needs some fiber optic internet. So he's going to have to like leave and come back in again. So while he's doing that, we're going to continue talking with Sean about Shaun of the Dead. So the thing about, while he's getting reset and he's frozen here, we're going to the thing about Shaun of the Dead that I thought was unique was, of course, I go back to Romero. When I was a kid, I watched Night of the Living Dead on late night creature feature with my mom when I'm like 12 years old. Terrified me, just literally terrified me. And so zombie culture was one of those things, like those movies always affected me. The idea of being eaten alive or the dead coming back to life. And so it was one of my favorite genres. Now they've done it to death, pun intended. But with Shaun of the Dead, I remember distinctly when I saw the trailer for it, I was with friends going to see the remake of Dawn of the Dead in England, living in England. And they showed a trailer for Shaun of the Dead, and it was like a must-see movie. The trailer alone was just like, this is the perfect spoof of zombie cinema.
Yeah.
So what are your memories of like the first time you saw Shaun of the Dead, and did you get that same type of experience?
I mean, you kind of nailed it. Like, it was like, okay, we know this take. Now let's go with more of a comedic take, because I don't really think there was anything before that at all.
Yeah, you're right. I if there was a zombie comedy that was that way with flesh-eating zombies, I don't think that I had ever seen.
I mean, the only thing I remember, and it's not my boyfriend's back, or you remember that early mid 90s what was it called? Something like My Boyfriend's Back.
Yeah, I think
he
it was
came
called
back
My Boyfriend's Back. Yeah, I remember that.
but that's not really a zombie focused movie.
No.
But I think Shaun of the Dead was the first horror comedy zombie.
Yeah, and there's been several since. Of course, Zombieland, which we talked about earlier. There was a really good one. I don't know if you've ever seen it with Billy Connolly, called Fido, where they treat zombies like Eric was talking about earlier. They treat zombies as pets, so they have these collars on them that can keep them under control. And Billy Connolly plays Fido, which is a family's pet zombie. Very good zombie comedy. Little Creatures I saw recently, where it's like a summer camp thing where this group of camp counselors go out and all the kids turn into zombies, and the camp counselors have to fight off the kids. So there's some really good ones out there, but it didn't. I like I said, 2005 was the first time I saw anybody take a humorous slant at the zombie culture, and it was like a must see. I've got to see what they do. And it was clearly born out of love. I mean, when you watch this film, you can see all the Romero references that Simon Pegg does. It's pretty outstanding. Eric is back with us.
My sense of just awareness of things going on around me is so bad, Greg, because in the amount of time that I kept talking about the differences between The Office UK and The Office, I could have defended a doctoral thesis. And I mean, like, I was just on a roll, and then I just looked down and the whole screen is just spinning, dumb loading icons. Anyway, there's a difference, and what the fuck.
But I get what you're saying. So I lived in England for a good, like I said, I lived from 2000 to 2004. and then I went back again in 2007 to 2011, and then my family lived there next year while I was in Portugal. So we immersed ourselves into British culture and the lifestyle, and it's our second home. I've already told my wife that if we didn't have kids that were getting ready to have kids, I would probably move to England tomorrow. I have some of my greatest friends live over there, and we were just there a couple of years ago visiting everyone, and it felt like being back home. But the cultures are different, and so that's what's great about Shaun of the Dead is that you get that British take on the love of the zombie culture and like you said, the pub culture. So I don't know if either of you ever saw a film or a TV show that Simon Pegg did before all of this called Spaced. Are you familiar with that at all?
Nah.
I would give it a look. It is a sitcom that he did with Nick Frost from Shaun of the Dead.
I have 400 hours of viewing recommendations from you so far. Do you want me to put this closer to the top of the list, middle, or closer to the bottom?
I would say it's good. It's fun. It's fun to watch. It's not very long. Like each season's like 6 episodes. I think they did 3 seasons. So it's not like there's that much in it. But it's an interesting look at how this movie came about. You can see them crafting the humor behind it. And one of the things that I think that's done extremely well, if you don't know Spaced, is there's a scene, and I'm going to bring it up right now, where there's 2 groups that meet each other,
and they're all similar.
Yes, but the thing is that the lady leading the second group is the character was Simon Pegg's girlfriend on Spaced. So they had this, that's why the connection was there, where they run into each other, and that's actually like his former girlfriend from Spaced. So it kind of ties it into the TV show. So it's really funny from that standpoint. So there's a reason they did this. As soon as I saw it, because I had been living in England and was watching Spaced, I was like, that is, only British people would get that joke. And then you got Martin Freeman in there, who was also in Spaced. So yeah, it's interesting when you see the 2 groups come together and they're completely identical, but there's a reason behind that. And that was another like inside joke for Simon Pegg.
I do wonder if it being so firmly British.
Yes.
It feels, I don't know if it feels, I wonder if American audiences are just drawn to that because not only is it well written, not only is it well acted, not only is it kind of a genre defining or first of its kind, really, movie like you were talking about, but there's a certain exotic element to all things British. Americans are Anglophiles at a level probably not seen throughout the rest of the world because obviously we have a history with them. But I say this all the time. Get a American from Mississippi or Alabama or any of the other dumb fuck states and have them say the same thing as a Oxford professor, and one is going to sound more authoritative, like they know what they're talking about, and so I wonder if Americans like Shaun of the Dead more than a British audience, the same as a British audience,
yeah,
because to a British audience, that's just everyday life.
Yeah.
To us, that's an exotic take on what a zombie invasion or, outbreak would look like. Also, pub culture, yes. British humor culture, yes. Also, an underlying take on the lack of a British gun culture because the bar they hang out is the Winchester, and there's a gun mounted over the bar, and there's a recurring, would it even work? Would anyone know how to use it? Yeah. Would ammunition be available? And I thought that was just kind of funny too, as a second layer of building around a theme.
Yeah, it is interesting because so many of the Romero films and other like Dawn of the Dead from the 70s, there's a lot of guns in it, and that's how they defend themselves from the shoot the zombies in the head and destroy the brain. And yeah, so you get this different take on it where there's just the one weapon that they can use that's the gun. So yeah, I did appreciate that quite a bit from that kind of standpoint. So we have a clip that I want to show. Now, normally when we do clips on this show, we try to do ones with a lot of dialogue so that the people who just listen on the streaming, and by the way, if you're listening to it on Spotify or Amazon Music, thank you very much. Streams keep going up, so make sure you like and share and subscribe to
review might help.
Whatever service that you use. Throw that plug out there.
I can help start your review. I found the Box Office Battles podcast with Greg and Eric to be fascinating, funny, and entertaining. I found co-host Eric to be particularly knowledgeable, and then you just take it from there.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's just your start.
Yeah, I'm not trying to tell you what to write.
But this particular clip, there's no dialogue in it. So sorry for the streamers. Probably just cut it out. So from this point, and then I'll start up again afterwards. But I wanted to share this because this has been circulating on the internet for quite a while. It's in different behind the scenes documentaries of Shaun of the Dead. And it is the clip of where Shaun gets up and goes to the store before the zombie apocalypse happens. And then when he gets up the morning of, and it's a scene by scene comparison of how well they did the two simultaneously. So let's take a look.
Hey, you're dead.
Some change, please, mister.
Yeah.
Deep space probe Omega-6, due to return to Earth this weekend, unexpectedly re-entered Earth's atmosphere in the southeastern movement, broken apart and believed to be.
Nelson. Nelson. Nelson, have you got any papers?
Hello, my friend. Not here today?
Nelson. Oh, it's a bit early for me. I owe you about 15p.
So it's pretty good when you see them side by side. So you watch it in the movie and you know that it's a similar scene, but then when you see it together, they specifically shot it with the same type of camera lens, the same type of movements, and it just shows the overall theme, which I think what they're going for in the film, from the opening credits, is that sometimes we're all zombies and we don't notice what is going on. They show
Greg.
They show the guys in the alley. Well, this isn't rocket science. I mean, when I showed like the clip of the guys in the alley and they're just kind of bobbing their heads as the credits roll. These aren't zombies yet, and it's just people in Britain, and it just has this take of Shaun not realizing that anything's changed because life really hasn't changed. And so when the epidemic gets heightened, all that they want to do is go to the pub and have a pint. That's the big thing. So it's interesting to me. It's a good when you do a film like that, where you give that underlying vibe to it, which permeates Shaun of the Dead all the way through.
Yeah. Well, and we are creatures of habit. And so having those interrupted, it feels weird, but yeah, but most of our day can be defined by very regimented things. So yeah, it would be an interesting social experiment. If someone came into my house overnight, because I get up at 6 every morning, I make a pot of coffee, I look at my phone, sports scores or Reddit or something while the coffee's making, pour myself a cup. I walk upstairs, start getting both of the kids up. My partner Kelsey is usually up, 6:45, and we're making breakfast. All of these things, right? That's a routine. That's 5 days a week. But I wonder if just, I don't know, someone just painted one of the walls upstairs black. If I would notice that at 6 a.m. when I'm going up there, or, if my neighbor's car were different or whatever, because I am just on autopilot. I mean, I make the kids basically the same lunch every day. If it's hot out, the boys in shorts and a t-shirt. It's like clockwork because it has to be like clockwork in order to make life work. And you start to tune out of details. I wonder how much I would recognize and how much I wouldn't. It would be fascinating. I'm sure there's, shows or studies are done on the subject, but they do this related thing where you'll be at a company, they'll show you a video and they'll be like, count the number of times the basketball gets bounced in this video.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they're like, well, what number did you get? Well, I got 25. I got 26. How many bears did you see in this video? And you're like, what? I didn't see any bears. But, that's the point of being constant on one thing and not the other. So,
yeah.
And like Ripley says, Sean is dense anyway. Not you, Sean 316 Sean, but Shaun of the Dead Sean. I would imagine that's what he means. That's what he spelled it.
And it ties into the end of the film, where his buddy is turned into a zombie and they're still doing the same old things that they were doing prior to the zombie apocalypse. They're playing video games and just still hanging out. And now it's just in the tool shed. So Shaun of the Dead, just to, kind of wrap it all up, is the first of its kind. Like Sean 316 said, it's like, there was no other zombie, horror comedy like that. Now there's a plethora of those. And so it really set the bar for anything that came afterwards. So everything else is just imitating it, including Zombieland, to some extent. And there's a lot we could talk about specific moments in Shaun of the Dead, but it's overall part of a series of Simon Pegg movies that work almost as a parody, similar to Hot Fuzz and The World's End, which was like the Cornetto trilogy is what they called them. And they work as a parody, but they also work as their separate comedy films. So I do think that it's an amazing film as far as a horror comedy goes, and it's an amazing film just as a zombie film goes. As a lover of zombie movies, I think it does its job exactly what you want, is that zombie interaction, the storyline, the sense of hopelessness, the big scene where I tell you what, the movie is pretty upbeat and funny until they get into the Winchester.
Yeah.
And then it takes a dark turn when everybody just starts getting eaten.
Well, and you think, because the whole movie's about getting there, in your mind as a viewer, you think, okay, well, if they can just get there, then this all works out the way that they had planned. And it doesn't. Like you said, it gets pretty hairy. Yeah, I think Shaun of the Dead establishing this as a viable genre.
Okay. Yep.
You can look at the ones that came after, and maybe you could pick apart, well, The Walking Dead TV show did this specific thing better, or maybe Zombieland did that thing a little better than Shaun of the Dead. But I think as a sum of its parts and as an overall thing, it created the genre, and it still defines the genre.
Yep.
It really, it's like the first guy to throw a curveball. Pitchers today throw a better curveball than whoever the first guy to throw a curveball was. We've studied it. We know what's going on. You can be derivative, but the first guy changed the game. No longer are we just tossing balls as hard as we can, as fast as we can, and I think it's a pretty seismic shift in just what's capable, not to mention the fact we probably don't have very many of those other movies or TV shows if you don't have Shaun of the Dead, if you don't prove it's a viable product or a space where horror, or those dark themes can be met with comedy and can be successful. If this movie fails, if this movie doesn't do it right or isn't loved as either a commercial success or as a cult classic, then you don't get the other works that we compare it to. So, so then by that metric, there's really not much of a comparison in my mind.
The tough question is, having watched all 4 of these in a matter of a week to get down to it, is kind of now coming up with which is the best. Now, this is the part of the show. We are arbitrarily deciding what the best horror comedy is tonight for the Halloween special. We have Sean in just for this occasion. So, Sean, we're going to start with you before Eric and I vote. Because I want to hear what you have to say between Tucker and Dale versus Evil and Shaun of the Dead. Which is the superior film?
Tucker and Dale. Hands down.
Why? Why is that?
It's just the rewatchability is so high. Not that Shaun of the Dead isn't, but for me personally, I love that stupid Tucker and Dale comedy more than Shaun of the Dead. And actually, out of all their films, I think this is my least favorite, but I do enjoy it.
Okay, so you like The World's End and Hot Fuzz better than Shaun?
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's a very interesting take. All right, so we've heard from Sean. He likes Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I know I personally, it's a tough one for me. And I said I would go first this time. And I honestly, I did not know going into tonight which way I would vote. And I'm honestly going to say, and I'm surprising myself with this, is I've watched Shaun of the Dead 30 times easily. I have it on 4K. But I watched Tucker and Dale yesterday, and my wife walked in halfway through, and I don't know how many times I looked over and I said, this is a really well-written movie that is so enjoyable. Even though it's gory, even though it's a great horror comedy in every sense of the word. And I'm going to give it the slight edge. I'm going to go with Tucker and Dale as well. So, Eric, which one would you have voted for out of the two?
Tucker and Dale.
Oh, shit. Isn't that weird?
I mean, I was setting up Shaun of the Dead as the Honda Accord of this genre, right?
Wow.
Reliable. You can own it for 20 years. You could, people 20 years ago bought Honda Accords. People 20 years from now will buy Honda Accords. It's tried and true, but is that anyone's dream car? Probably not. I think Tucker and Dale had enough differentiating factors to just make it, just like Sean said, just the one that I would want to watch again, that I would prefer to watch. I'd watch them both again. I enjoyed them both, but it's just the one I'd prefer to watch again.
I've watched Shaun a lot of times because when it first came out, it was a favorite. And again, we talked about Zombieland. The longer it's out, the shine wears off a little bit. And I still think Shaun is a great movie. I still watch it like every other year, once a year. I always find myself putting it on as just one of those go-to things. I watch the remake of Dawn of the Dead from 2004. I watch that a lot as well. That's like, if I want to watch a horror movie, I'll put that on. And we've talked about this show, this podcast. And one of the things I've said was when we try to judge what these movies are and what they mean to us, it's like we look at, well, what, if I was a chef and I was trying to judge a meal, which meal would I want to eat again, like on a cooking show? And it was without a doubt, after watching all 4 films over the past 2 days, the one I would put on right now, if I was going to go upstairs and watch a movie out of the 4, would be Tucker and Dale. So I think I'm already saying.
I mean, I was going to say, we usually kind of revisit the movies, but we've also talked about them on different weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel the same way you do, and I enjoy. I mean, again, this show, Jaret Goes to the Movies as well. I am not a movie guy. It's just not ever been important enough to me to make a priority in my life. But this forces me to watch movies that I absolutely otherwise would not have.
Yeah.
And so I get a little bit of a different viewpoint. I had never seen any of these 4 movies, and so they're all new to me. I don't have any emotional attachment to any of them, but the Tucker and Dale was the most fun. It had an interesting premise. It just, it didn't take itself too seriously. The genre does not require the movie to take itself too seriously, which is great. You're not constrained by that. And so it left them free to just do something just unique enough to really stand out among these 4. My vote would be for Tucker and Dale as well.
Yeah, and as much as I okay, so backing up, I like and love all 4 of these films. These are the top 4 horror comedies. I'm a horror guy and I'm a comedy guy, and so this is kind of my genre. I really love it. And I watch all of these. And it's those things like we just said, is like, if I had 4 dishes and these were the dishes I'm offered, which would I eat again right now? And after watching all 4 films over 2 days, I would definitely put on Tucker and Dale right now. So with that being said, Sean, we both agree. I'm assuming that you agree with this as well.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? The one that really got in by a whisker into this battle. And it's kind of funny when you were talking right there, and what I get a joy out. We're at episode 11. I don't know how many films I've made you watch, and some you've liked, like Singing in the Rain, that you've never seen and that you loved. Some that you didn't, like Raging Bull. We didn't dislike it, but it's a dark film, and Caddyshack that you hated. It happens. But you found others that you love. I think we need to change the name of the podcast to Greg Makes Eric Watch Movies.
But I mean, I signed up for that, right? But I signed up for it because, I mean, for a lot of reasons. I like you. I missed doing the show with Jaret and them. But from a completely selfish standpoint, like, I get a lot of enjoyment over seeing this stuff that again, I'm a creature of habit like everybody. And so at the end of a day, if I don't have to watch a movie, I'm not going to watch a movie. I'm going to put on The Office, or I'm going to put on the YouTube guy that I enjoy watching, or I'm going to watch soccer or football or.
Yep.
So
I totally get that.
But I enjoy this so much that I just have to make myself do it. And then knowing that you and I get to kind of download and start talking about what we thought about it, that's worth it to me. So yeah, you can keep forcing me to watch movies, but I signed up for it and I'm happy that I have.
That's a really good point, because I'm a movie lover, but I do the same thing where I get into my shows. I'll watch true crime or I'll watch whatever instead of watching a movie, because I'm like, I don't have 2 hours. But when I know I have to watch it, I'm like, all right, I'm going to put it on. And then I find myself enjoying it, because, I'm glad I put this on. I will say this, out of these 4 movies and other movies that we've done recently, I'm starting to worry about the state of current cinema. Maybe that's a topic for our next episode, because I've seen a lot of movies this year and they're not really holding a candle. I just saw Alien Romulus, and I'm like, it wasn't a bad film, but wow, there were a lot of plot holes. There were
Aren't we just coming out of a writer's strike and
it's been a while though.
The industry's moving from
we
or
can't
at least
make that excuse.
Learning how to
I
deal with
think-
streaming versus
And I think
attention spans versus
I think that streaming has a big part of it. I think we're watering down the screenplays. Like I have not seen anything as inventive or creative or funny as Tucker and Dale in a very long time. Pre-pandemic.
join us next week on Old Man Yells at a Cloud.
So I will say this. We will talk about it because well, first of all, let's congrats Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Unbelievable. I did not see this coming going into this. I thought Sean was kind of a slam dunk, but talking it through, like you said, Eric, and just really reliving the watching all four films, it just made the most sense. So that being said, another talk for another day about the current state of cinema, because our next topic, we are going to be back in 2 weeks on the 19th of November to start a brand new category. What it is, it's kind of we got to figure it out because Eric and I have been talking about this, and it's like we want to do movies that are like Mystery Science Theater, so bad they're good, but are they really good, or are they bad? Are they good because they're bad? It's one of those.
Are they the best of the bad? Are we going for the one that we'd rather watch out of these 8 shithole movies? Are we trying to figure out which one is objectively bad? Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. Guess what? We don't have to know until we get in there and we follow our hearts. And Greg, if you're going to follow anything, might as well be your heart.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to ask the audience's help for this. So we will be putting it out on the Facebook pages to say, hey, we've got 8 in mind, but we've got a few others that we're going to start this new bracket. You can submit your so bad it's good movies. We'll probably replace maybe 2 of the 8 with the audience's suggestions, but there's going to be some stinkers coming up that we're going to have to subject ourselves to and kind of figure this out. But that'll be in 2 weeks. Right now, we're going to enjoy what we did tonight. I want to thank Sean so much for coming in and being a guest. Thanks, dude.
Of course, guys. Thanks so much. Like I said, I was texting with you both. I was like, you guys got to make this happen. Someone's got to take that torch and run with it. And I'm glad you guys did.
Thanks,
I appreciate it. And we're hoping that eventually that we can get each one of the members of Jaret Goes to the Movies on as a guest. We'd like to get Amy on and Casey and eventually Jared, even though good Lord knows when he's ever going to be home. I did talk to him about it. I got to spend a lot of time with him in Columbus when we went to see their show there. And we talked about this podcast and that, and the potential for a possible reunion special next year to get the whole crew together for a show. And he said, yeah, he'd really like to do that. But they're doing UK in February. He's like, I don't know when, but probably be sometime after the UK trip. And I'm like, that's cool. We'll make that work. So, Mike Florida, Mike Lebinovitz said that love seeing you again, Sean. Just okay to see you other podcast guys too. Glad you had the special good times around. Can't wait to see the future episodes. So it'll be good. Thank you again so much. Last thing, if you enjoy the show, make sure whether you watched it on Twitch, you can go to Box Office Battle Pod. If you watched it on YouTube, it's at Box Office Battle Podcast. Tell your friends. You can also email us for any suggestions or anything like that. Keep the emails coming in at boxofficebattles@gmail.com. And we will be back, like I said, in 2 weeks. Catch the episodes on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and many others. So we're going to get out of here. We want to wish everybody a happy Halloween. Enjoy the spooky time. And we'll catch you in 2 weeks. Eric, before we go.
Thank you guys for listening. Y'all take care of yourselves. And until next time, y'all be excellent to each other. We'll see you then.
Take it easy, everyone.